Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the 3030 Winchester. Is it a good brush gun? Stay tuned. All right guys, all my life I've heard that the 3030 Winchester is a great brush gun. Do I agree with that? Sure, absolutely. However, is it better at being a brush gun than, say, a 30-06? I've heard people make that claim. I know some people that would use a 30-06 or did for a while, or a 270, and they had some issues in the woods where they felt like it just didn't go well. Like their bullet ricocheted off some limbs and didn't hit the deer where they meant to hit it, or it missed it completely. And they switched over to a 30-30. And they never had that trouble since. It just plows right through the brush and takes out the deer. Do I agree with that? I would say no. So let's just talk about it today. So just to define the term, when I say brush gun, I mean a rifle cartridge that would be good, the rifle and the cartridge, that would be good for the application of shooting in the thick woods, basically. So you're not gonna have long shots, you're gonna have a shorter shot. And it might be that you just see the deer in little windows as it crosses your field of view because of a lot of brush or limbs or things like that sticking out in the way. And if you do happen to nick a little bit of brush or a limb hanging out, it's just gonna go right on through and it's gonna hit the deer true and centered right where you're aiming. So that would be what a brush gun means. Now this could apply to another type of cartridge like a 4570, 450 Bushmaster, you know, something that just is a little slower, probably has a round nose, very possibly in a lever action. But that style of rifle and cartridge become known as brush guns. And so to answer the question, is it better at being a brush gun than another cartridge? It really would depend on a lot of things. Number one, what cartridge are you comparing it to? So 3030 versus a 22, which you can't hunt deer with a 22 legally, but it would be better than a 22 at punching through brush, of course, but that's because it's just a bigger, heavier bullet. 22 is easily gonna ricochet, right? What about if we compare it to something like a 30-06? Because I've literally heard people say that the 3030 was better as a brush gun than a 30-06, or say a 308. Now that doesn't make any sense to me. I think what the people who believe that are saying is that because it's going slower, it's not gonna ricochet as much or deviate from its path as far. I mean, there will be some, if it hits a limb, it's gonna move some, but maybe because it's going slower, it's not going to ricochet as bad. And that with the increased speed, it's just going to completely go off track easier at the higher velocity. I don't agree with that. Now, I don't know the answer to this. I mean, it's not like I'm telling you I know. I'd love to know your comments, what you might think about it. I'm just offering my opinion. There are times when a certain bullet might perform a certain application better than you'd think. For instance, if you don't really know much about the subject, you might think that like shooting into a pool of water, something like a 45 auto is going to penetrate deeper than that, let's say a 9mm. Or maybe you're using a 308 versus a 223. And your gut instinct would be to say, well, because that 308 or that 45 ACP is bigger, has more energy, it's going to penetrate deeper. When in reality, the test will show that the 9mm or the 223 going much faster will actually penetrate better, because it's not just the energy. In fact, it's more about the shape and the speed. But the momentum definitely plays a key with that too. So there are times where the thing you wouldn't expect to perform the best might perform the best. A slower bullet hitting a limb, would that be better than a faster bullet hitting a limb? Once again, I don't know the absolute answer. I don't know how you'd ever test it though. I really don't know how to test it, but to me it doesn't make any sense. All right, so maybe if there was a metal structure out in the woods and you shot a very slow moving 30-30 round nose bullet and a very fast, like a 300 Win Mag, more Spitzer shaped bullet, and you shot them both at the same angle at completely different speeds, and there's no give whatsoever in that metal frame or metal thing that's out there in the woods, perhaps the angle coming off would be different. Maybe the one going extremely fast would, ricochet more and have more of an angle, and you'd miss your target more than, say, a slower bullet that might not have quite the angle. But that's not reality. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about brush. We're talking about limbs that do have give, that are going to break. And so, to me, the faster bullet, once again, depending on some things, not a little tiny 22 bullet, but the faster bullet of the same weight is just going to punch through easier. If you shot a 150 grain 30-30 bullet and a 150 grain 30-06 bullet, and they hit the exact same limb at the exact same angle at the same time, they're both going to deviate from their path a little bit. That limb will cause the bullet to veer to some degree. But I would think that the bullet going faster with more energy would punch through it easier and slow down less, therefore veering off less. So I would think something like a 30-06 versus a 30-30, the 30-06 would be a better brush gun. The 308 would be a better brush gun than the 30-30. I guess it just depends on what cartridges you compare. Let's just say you're comparing a 243 with a 75 grain bullet and a 45-70 with a 400 grain bullet, and you say which one is a better brush gun, which one's going to punch through the brush better. Well, I would say for sure the 45-70, going at slower speeds than that 243 going at faster speeds, but much less energy because it's much smaller and doesn't have the mass. But I guess the question would be, when we say, is that a good brush gun? Is it that their attributes make them good at that particular task? Or is it that they're not good at other things and they're relegated back to being only a brush gun? Really, that's the question. So is the 30-30 a good brush gun? I would say it is, for sure. But does that mean it's better than the 30-06 or a 308 at being a brush gun? I would say no. I'd say they're better at being a brush gun than the 30-30. Plus, they're better at a lot of other things as well. And they're going to have much further range out in the open fields, and they're just going to be a better bullet overall. So I think the answer is any gun, as long as it's got some mass to the bullet, can be a good brush gun, but it could be that it's not really good for anything else. Now, that wasn't meant to offend anybody who loves the 30-30 or the 45-70, but it could be that a brush gun is just simply not good at a whole lot of other things, but it is good at that task. But there's a whole nother way to look at this, in which I could say, actually, the 30-30 is a really good brush gun. Part of the reason would be if it's a lever action. So one good thing about a brush gun is that you don't need it to be ultra accurate with a high power scope and being able to, dial turrets in at long range. You don't need any of that. In fact, you might not need a scope, period. Okay? And so you could go open sights and have your longest shot be maybe 75 yards and do just fine. And in that regard, a lever action lightweight gun without a scope is a good brush gun. And since the 30-30 cartridge already isn't going to be a 300 or 400 yard cartridge, then yeah, it would be good at that task. So sometimes the application, the rifle, and the cartridge can all come together to meet that need pretty well. 30-30 is not that hot of a cartridge. Therefore, you don't need a bolt action rifle with a giant scope. Therefore, it's good for short range shooting. And therefore, the woods is perfect, right? Also, it's going to be lightweight. So a lever action rifle that doesn't have a scope is going to be lightweight, easily packable. What if you drop it? Obviously, you don't want to drop it. It's got rounds in there that could go off, but What if you drop it? Well, you haven't messed up the scope. It didn't have a scope. You say, yeah, but a 30-30 coming out of the muzzle is only like 2,100 feet per second. That doesn't matter at shorter distances. It's fine, it's plenty. So it's really a great option for a gun just to kind of throw in your truck, and when you get there, pull it out. You're not worried about it being sighted in, and you know your shots are going to be short. It's just going to be really good. And if a deer does come out and comes running across the woods and you have to make a shot fairly quickly, once again, perfect round for that. And as long as you understand bullet construction, those old PowerPoints and those old core locks that really were designed back when most people were shooting slower bullets. As long as you have a bullet coming out of your 30-30 that's designed to open up at slower speeds, it's perfect. In fact, sometimes we put bullets in high-powered rifles that don't really need to be there, and they just shatter into a million pieces. But those same bullets in a slower cartridge like a 30-30 might hold together perfectly, penetrate perfectly, and be a really good killer. A lot of people I know use 30-30s, and they are a deer killer. Now, these shots were always usually very close up. Furthest one I know of was maybe 250 yards. But generally speaking, it's a 100-yard shot or less, and it's a deer whacker. It drops them right where they stand. Many people have killed elk and black bear and many other things with a 30-30 at fairly close range. So I guess to answer the question, is the 30-30 a good brush gun? Absolutely. Especially when it's in a lever action rifle, when you're not even using a scope. Yeah, it's a great gun, rifle for that application. But is the cartridge better at being a brush gun than other cartridges that are faster, like a 30-06? No, guys, in my opinion, that just doesn't make any sense. And for those listening all across the world, I know you guys use a lot of different cartridges. I know 6.5 Swede, 243, and a lot of other European cartridges, for instance, that I don't really talk about on the channel are very popular, and you guys use them over there. Just know that here in America, probably more white-tailed deer have been killed with a 30-30 Winchester than anything else. And if anything comes close, that's probably the 30-06 would be the next. But the 30-30 has taken countless white-tailed deer here in North America, and especially here in the US. So it's a great cartridge. But is it better than other cartridges at being a brush gun? I would say no. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Comment below whether you agree, disagree. Maybe you have information I don't have. Maybe you're looking at this from another perspective. Love to hear about it. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. More videos like this coming out. Hope you have a great day, and until next time, take care.